Get out of my house, you ungrateful wolf. Claire Bennett stood in the middle of her living room with both hands on her hips, staring at nearly 150 pounds of black fur stretched across the only comfortable couch she owned. The wolf opened one gray eye, regarded her with unmistakable irritation, and closed it again. Oh, absolutely not. Claire pointed toward the rug beside the fireplace. I rescued you from a snowstorm. I gave you my best blanket. I cooked you actual chicken because apparently canned food is beneath your mysterious standards. The least you can do is let me sit down. The wolf released a low, offended sound and deliberately rested his enormous head on the last empty cushion. Claire stared at him. He stared back. 3 days earlier, she had found him alone near the forest road outside Pine Hollow. Since then, she had become increasingly convinced that something was deeply unusual about her unexpected guest. Normal wolves did not understand complete sentences. Normal wolves did not glare when given ridiculous nicknames. And normal wolves certainly did not push a bowl away after smelling cheap food, only to watch patiently while someone cooked dinner. Fine, Claire muttered. Keep the couch, Your Majesty. Both of the wolf's eyes opened. Claire froze. There it was again. That strange reaction whenever she said something that should have meant nothing to an animal. Before she could think about it, the sound of engines rolled through the quiet morning. One vehicle, then another, then several more. The wolf was standing before Claire reached the window. A line of black vehicles moved slowly along the snow-covered driveway toward her small house. Were you expecting company? She whispered. His ears moved forward. Claire looked at him. Right. Stupid question. The vehicle stopped. Doors opened almost simultaneously, and more than a dozen men and women stepped into the snow wearing dark winter coats. None looked lost. None looked like animal control. The wolf moved directly in front of Claire, placing his massive body between her and the door. Her irritation disappeared. You know them. A knock echoed through the house. Claire hesitated, then opened the door only several inches. A tall silver-haired man stood outside. His worried expression changed instantly when he saw the wolf behind her. Relief swept across his face. Then, to Claire's complete disbelief, he lowered himself to one knee in the snow. Everyone behind him did the same. Your Majesty, the man said. Claire slowly turned toward the animal that had stolen her couch, rejected her groceries, and ignored every command she had given him for 72 hours. The wolf stood perfectly still. His gray eyes no longer looked merely intelligent. They looked ancient, commanding, and completely aware. Claire swallowed. Your Majesty, she repeated. The silver-haired man looked at her sharply. You have been sheltering the Alpha King. Claire gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Of course I have. She looked down at the wolf. Why would my week become normal now? The wolf stepped closer until his shoulder touched her hand. Then something impossible moved through her mind. Not a sound exactly, but a deep male voice she understood as clearly as if someone had whispered beside her. Do not be afraid. Claire stopped breathing. The voice came again, calm and unmistakably commanding. They cannot take me from my mate. Her eyes widened. You're what? Every person outside lifted their head. The wolf merely looked at her, and for the first time since she had dragged him out of the snow, Claire wondered whether rescuing him had been the beginning of something far more dangerous than bringing home a stray. 72 hours earlier, Claire had been driving home through the worst snowstorm Pine Hollow had seen that winter when a dark shape appeared beside the forest road. At first, she thought it was a fallen branch. Then her headlights caught two gray eyes reflecting through the snow. Claire slowed her old pickup truck and pulled onto the shoulder. Please be a very large dog, she whispered. The moment she stepped outside, she knew it was not. A massive black wolf lay beneath a cedar tree, exhausted but alert, watching every movement she made. Claire stopped several feet away. All right, you are definitely not a dog. The wolf released a warning sound. And apparently you have opinions. She should have returned to her truck and called wildlife services. Instead, she noticed the strange silver collar around his neck. It was too carefully made to belong on a wild animal, engraved with symbols she did not recognize. The wolf tried to rise, but weakness forced him back into the snow. Claire lowered herself carefully, keeping her distance. I am not going to hurt you. His gray eyes narrowed as if he considered that statement suspicious. You do realize I am the one standing in a blizzard talking to a wolf, right? I should be more worried than you. Another gust of wind swept across the road. Claire looked toward the forest, then back at him. Fine. Here's the deal. You can stay here and freeze, or you can tolerate me for 10 minutes. The wolf stared at her. I am choosing to interpret your silence as agreement. Getting him into the truck required patience, 2 blankets, and more stubbornness than Claire knew either of them possessed. The strangest part was that once she opened the passenger door, he climbed inside without assistance and immediately occupied the entire seat. Claire stood outside in the snow, staring at him. You could walk this whole time? The wolf looked away. Unbelievable. During the drive home, she noticed him repeatedly touching the silver collar with one paw. Every time he did, his body tensed, and the strange markings seemed to catch the dashboard light. Claire reached toward it once. His head snapped toward her. Understood. Personal space. At her cottage, she prepared a place beside the fireplace. The wolf inspected the blanket, then looked directly at the couch. Do not even think about it. 20 minutes later, he was lying on the couch. Claire stood in the kitchen heating chicken broth while questioning every decision that had brought her to this moment. When she returned, the wolf was staring at a framed photograph of Claire and her late grandmother. His expression changed when Claire entered. She raised me, Claire said quietly, unsure why she was explaining herself to an animal. She also taught me never to leave anyone alone in a storm. So technically, this is her fault. The wolf lowered his head. For the first time, he seemed less like a dangerous creature and more like someone who understood loneliness. Claire placed the bowl nearby. You need a name until I figure out where you belong. His ears immediately moved backward. How about Buddy? The look he gave her was so deeply offended that Claire laughed. Buddy it is. The wolf turned his head away with unmistakable dignity. Claire smiled and reached for another blanket, never noticing that beneath his thick black fur, the symbols on the silver collar had begun glowing faintly. Nor could she know that the exhausted stranger on her couch understood every word she said, remembered exactly who had placed that collar around his neck, and had just realized something far more unsettling than being trapped in the body of a wolf. The Omega standing in front of him carried a presence his instincts had recognized immediately, even if the king inside him was not yet ready to accept what it meant. By the next morning, Claire had learned 3 things about Buddy. He hated his name. He considered inexpensive food a personal insult, and he understood far more English than any wolf had a right to understand. She discovered the second fact at breakfast when she placed a bowl of canned meat beside the fireplace. Buddy approached, smelled it once, then slowly looked at her. Do not judge me, Claire said. He looked back at the bowl. It is perfectly good food. He walked away. Claire stared after him. You were lying in a snowbank 12 hours ago. Buddy climbed onto the couch and settled down with his back toward her. Fine. Starved dramatically. 20 minutes later, Claire was cooking eggs and chicken because apparently she had no authority in her own home. The moment she placed the fresh food down, Buddy appeared beside her. I cannot believe you. He ate without a trace of shame. Claire spent the afternoon working from her kitchen table, reviewing supply requests for the Pine Hollow Community Center. Buddy remained nearby, pretending not to watch her while somehow reacting to every conversation she had. When Claire complained about a delayed heating shipment, his ears moved forward. When she mentioned the Blackwood territory, his entire body became still. Claire noticed. You know that name? Buddy looked away. She narrowed her eyes. Interesting. Later, she tested him. Blackwood. His ears moved again. Pine Hollow. Nothing. Buddy. He gave her an offended stare. Claire leaned back in her chair. You are either the smartest wolf in America or the strangest roommate I have ever had. That evening, she found him standing beside the front window, watching the dark tree line. The storm had weakened, but fresh tire tracks were visible near the road. Claire had not heard any vehicles. Someone out there? Buddy turned toward her, then deliberately positioned himself between Claire and the window. Her smile disappeared. That was not comforting. She checked the door locks before going upstairs. Near midnight, Claire woke from the same dream that had followed her since her grandmother died. In it, she was always standing in an empty house calling for someone who never answered. She sat upright, breathing slowly, and noticed a shadow beneath her bedroom door. Claire opened it. Buddy was lying in the hallway. He immediately closed his eyes as if he had simply chosen that exact location for no particular reason. Claire folded her arms. Were you guarding my door? One gray eye opened. You know, for someone who acts permanently annoyed with me, You are surprisingly thoughtful. Buddy looked away. Claire sat on the floor beside him, leaving enough space between them. Do not worry. I will not tell anyone about your reputation. For several quiet minutes, neither moved. Then Claire noticed the silver collar again. The markings were glowing faintly. She reached toward it, but stopped before touching it. Is this hurting you? Buddy looked directly at her. The answer was somehow obvious. Yes. Claire's expression softened. Then we should remove it. His entire body tensed. Not because he feared her, she realized, but because he feared what might happen if she tried. Claire lowered her hand. All right. Not tonight. Buddy relaxed. She stood and returned to her room, leaving the door slightly open. Before falling asleep, Claire heard him settle outside again. Downstairs, beyond the frosted windows, headlights briefly appeared between the trees and disappeared. Someone was searching the forest. And inside the cottage, the wolf who had once commanded an entire kingdom remained silently outside in Omega's bedroom, guarding the first person in years who had cared whether he was in pain before asking who he was. Adrian Blackwood had spent most of his life believing helplessness was something that happened to other people. Kings gave orders. Alphas protected territories. Men like him did not wake beneath unfamiliar trees trapped inside their wolf form with a silver collar burning away every attempt to shift back. Yet for nearly 2 days, he had been unable to speak, unable to contact Blackwood, and unable to explain to the stubborn Omega who had rescued him that she was sharing her cottage with the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. At first, Adrian had found Claire Bennett exhausting. She talked to him constantly. She called him Buddy despite his repeated expressions of disgust. She complained about his size while giving him the warmest blanket in the house. She had even informed him that if he ruined her couch, he would somehow be responsible for replacing it. No one spoke to Adrian that way. No one except Claire, because Claire had absolutely no idea who he was. That should have irritated him more than it did. Instead, Adrian discovered something dangerously unfamiliar in her small cottage. Peace. Claire did not study his expression for political advantage. She did not measure every word around him. She expected nothing from him except basic manners, which was unfortunate because she remained convinced he had none. More troubling was the instinct that had awakened the moment she approached him in the snow. Mate. The word had moved through him with immediate certainty. Adrian had rejected it just as quickly. Instinct was not permission. A bond was not ownership. Claire had a life before finding him, and she deserved more than having a stranger appear and declare that destiny had made decisions for her. Still, his wolf noticed everything about her. The way she gave away half her groceries to families at the community center. The way she pretended loneliness did not bother her. The way she left her bedroom door open after discovering him outside it, as though trusting him had required no debate at all. That trust frightened Adrian more than the collar. On the second afternoon, Claire sat cross-legged on the floor several feet away from him, studying the silver band around his neck. I have been thinking. Adrian immediately became concerned. Claire narrowed her eyes. That expression was rude. If he could have answered, he would have told her it was accurate. She held up her phone. I searched every wildlife database I could find. That collar is not normal. Adrian remained still. And neither are you. She leaned closer, though she carefully avoided touching the silver. You understand me, do you not? Adrian looked away. Buddy, nothing. If you understand me, look at the fireplace. He refused. Claire smiled slowly. Look at the window. He continued staring forward. Your Majesty? His eyes moved before he could stop them. Claire froze. Adrian silently cursed himself. I knew it. She pointed at him triumphantly. I do not know what I knew, exactly, but I knew something. A vehicle engine sounded somewhere beyond the trees. Adrian was on his feet instantly. Claire's amusement vanished. Through the window, distant headlights moved between the snow-covered pines. Adrian recognized the pattern. Search teams. Whether they belonged to Blackwood or the people who had placed the collar on him, he could not know. Claire stepped beside him. Are they looking for you? Adrian turned his gray eyes toward her. For the first time, he wished desperately that he could speak. Not to command her, not to explain his title, only to tell her to stay away from whatever danger had followed him into her life. Claire looked toward the approaching lights, then back at him. Whatever you are, she whispered, you are not facing them alone. Adrian stared at the woman who still believed she had rescued an angry stray wolf. At that moment, The Alpha King understood something his instincts had known before his pride did. The most dangerous part of those 3 days was no longer the silver collar around his neck. It was the possibility that when he finally became a man again, Claire might look at the king and miss the wolf she had trusted. The headlights disappeared before reaching Claire's driveway, leaving the forest silent again. Adrian remained at the window long after the darkness returned, every instinct warning him that time was running out. By morning, the third day had arrived, and with it came a strange change in the silver collar. The symbols no longer glowed steadily. They flickered. Claire noticed while carrying a plate of chicken into the living room. That thing is weakening, is it not? Adrian looked at her. I'm going to take that as a yes. She placed the plate down and crouched several feet away. Before you start glaring, I am not touching it. Adrian relaxed slightly. Claire smiled. You are becoming predictable, buddy. His expression immediately changed. There he is. She laughed and returned to the kitchen. Adrian watched her go, painfully aware that within hours she might know everything. Shortly before noon, engines approached again. This time they did not disappear. Black vehicles stopped along the driveway, and Adrian recognized the silver crest on the first door. Blackwood. Relief should have been his only emotion. Instead, he looked toward Claire and felt something unexpectedly close to regret. Their strange, quiet world was about to end. The knock came moments later. Claire opened the door cautiously while Adrian stood behind her. The silver-haired man outside saw him and immediately lowered himself to one knee. Your Majesty. Claire turned slowly. You have got to be kidding me. Adrian almost wished he could laugh. The Blackwood physician entered only after Claire allowed him inside. He examined the collar from a careful distance before explaining that its enchantment had weakened enough to be safely disabled. Disabled? Claire repeated. And then what happens? The physician looked toward Adrian. His natural form will return. Claire stared at the wolf. Natural form? Adrian held her gaze. Understanding arrived gradually, followed by disbelief. You are not actually a wolf. Adrian lowered his head once. Claire closed her eyes. I called you buddy. If he could have spoken, he would have assured her that he remembered every single time. The physician prepared a private room and asked Claire to wait downstairs while the collar was removed and Adrian's transformation occurred away from view. She paced beside the fireplace for nearly 20 minutes before footsteps sounded on the stairs. Claire turned. A tall man in borrowed black clothing descended slowly. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with dark brown hair, a strong, angular face, and the same unmistakable gray eyes. Claire stared at him. Adrian stopped several feet away. For the first time in 3 days, he could finally speak to her aloud. Claire. Her mouth opened, then closed. You know my name. You introduced yourself 6 times. His deep voice was exactly the voice she had heard inside her mind. Claire pointed toward him. You understood everything? Everything. The canned food. Unfortunately. The couch. It was comfortable. Claire stared at him in outrage. You let me argue with you for 3 days. I was physically incapable of answering. You could have nodded. Adrian considered that. I could have. Claire looked toward the ceiling as if requesting patience from the universe. Behind Adrian, the Blackwood attendants waited in respectful silence. One finally addressed him. Alpha King, the council is waiting for your return. Claire's expression changed again. So that part was real too. Adrian nodded. My name is Adrian Blackwood. Claire looked at the man standing where her impossible stray had been and folded her arms. Of course it is. Adrian almost smiled. Then his attention shifted to the silver collar resting inside a sealed case. Someone had placed it on him deliberately, and whoever had done so knew Claire had sheltered him. Their 3 peaceful days were over. Yet as Adrian looked back at her, one certainty remained. He had finally regained his kingdom, his voice, and his human form. But the first thing he feared losing was the woman who had wanted none of those things from him. Claire had barely finished processing the fact that Buddy was actually Adrian Blackwood when another man entered her living room without bothering to hide his disapproval. He was tall, silver at the temples, and dressed in an expensive charcoal coat. Your Majesty, he said, ignoring Claire completely. We should leave immediately. The council is already questioning how you disappeared, and remaining here with an unknown Omega will only create unnecessary complications. Claire raised an eyebrow. Unknown Omega is standing right here. The man finally looked at her. Marcus Vale, senior advisor to the Blackwood Council. Claire Bennett, owner of the couch your king stole for 3 days. Adrian looked away, but she caught the beginning of a smile. Marcus did not. Whatever assistance you provided will be compensated. Claire's expression cooled. I did not help him for money. Nevertheless, your involvement ends here. Adrian's amusement vanished. No. The single word changed the room. Marcus turned toward him. Your Majesty? Adrian stepped beside Claire. Her involvement does not end because you decided it should. With respect, she is an ordinary Omega who accidentally became involved in a matter of territorial security. Claire folded her arms. I am beginning to dislike him more than I disliked you yesterday. Adrian glanced at her. That seems unfair. You ate my chicken. You offered it. Marcus cleared his throat sharply. This is precisely the problem. Someone targeted you with restricted silver and kept you missing for 3 days. If word spreads that an Omega sheltered you alone, people will ask questions. Then we will answer them truthfully, Adrian said. Claire found me when no one else did. She gave me shelter without knowing my identity. She protected me when she believed strangers were searching for me. Marcus lowered his voice. And now she knows too much. The atmosphere changed instantly. Adrian moved slightly forward. Choose your next words carefully. Claire looked between them. I can speak for myself. Adrian immediately stepped back. The small gesture surprised her more than his warning had. Claire faced Marcus. I do not want your secrets, your money, or whatever political disaster is waiting at Blackwood. I would be perfectly happy returning to my normal life. That may no longer be possible, Marcus replied. Adrian's jaw tightened. Someone who knew about the collar may also know where I was found. He turned to Claire. Until we identify who was responsible, you could be used to reach me. Claire stared at him. So what are you suggesting? Come to Blackwood temporarily. Absolutely not. Claire, you have been human for less than an hour, and you are already giving orders. Adrian paused. That was not my intention. It sounded exactly like your intention. Several attendants suddenly became fascinated by the floor. Adrian took a slow breath. Then let me ask properly. Will you come to Blackwood until I know you are safe? Claire studied him. Before she could answer, Marcus spoke. Your Majesty, bringing her into the royal residence would encourage rumors that she has some personal claim on you. Adrian turned toward him. She does not need a claim on me. His gaze returned to Claire. I am the one who owes her. Marcus looked unconvinced. The council will demand to know what she is to you. Adrian's gray eyes held Claire's, and for one dangerous second, instinct moved faster than diplomacy. She is mine to protect. Silence filled the cottage. Claire's eyes narrowed immediately. Excuse me. Adrian realized his mistake. Marcus looked stunned. The attendants exchanged glances. Claire stepped closer and pointed toward the front door. You do not get to claim me because I gave you soup. It was chicken broth. That is what you took from this conversation. No. Adrian almost smiled, then wisely stopped. I chose my words badly. Very badly. He lowered his voice. Then let me choose better ones. You belong to no one, Claire. But while someone may be watching this house because of me, I will not pretend your safety is no longer my concern. Claire searched his face, expecting royal arrogance. Instead, she found the same gray eyes that had watched over her bedroom door. Temporary, she said finally. I go to Blackwood temporarily. Adrian nodded. Agreed. Claire pointed at him. And nobody calls me yours. Adrian glanced toward Marcus, whose expression had become unreadable. Understood. Yet as Marcus quietly watched them, Claire could not know that Adrian's careless words had already confirmed the one possibility the advisor feared most. The Alpha King had returned, and he had returned with someone he was willing to protect. Blackwood appeared through the falling snow just before sunset, rising above the mountain road like a place Claire had only seen in old photographs. Stone buildings stretched across the hillside, surrounded by dark pine forests and miles of white wilderness. Claire sat beside Adrian in the back of the vehicle, watching the gates open. You live here? She asked. Usually. And you preferred my couch? Adrian glanced at her. Your couch had fewer council meetings. Claire almost smiled, but the expression faded when they reached the main entrance. People were waiting. Staff members, guards, advisors, and several elegantly dressed council representatives stood beneath the covered stone steps. Every eye moved toward Adrian when he stepped from the vehicle. Then every eye shifted toward Claire. The silence felt different from the quiet of her cottage. This silence measured her. Claire climbed out without waiting for assistance. Adrian noticed, but said nothing. Marcus approached from another vehicle. The council expects an immediate briefing. They can wait 10 minutes, Adrian replied. Claire needs to settle in. A woman near the entrance whispered something to another council member. Claire did not hear every word, but she heard enough. Ordinary Omega. Adrian's expression hardened. Claire touched his sleeve before he could respond. Do not. He looked at her. I heard them. So did I. Then let them talk. Claire lifted her chin. I survived 3 days with you stealing my furniture. I can survive whispers. Adrian's mouth almost curved. You remained strangely focused on the couch. I paid for that couch. Inside, Blackwood was warmer than Claire expected, filled with polished wood, stone fireplaces, and enormous windows overlooking the mountains. Yet she immediately felt more exposed there than she ever had alone in the forest. A staff member escorted her toward a guest suite, but before they reached the stairs, an older councilwoman stepped into their path. Your Majesty, surely the Omega can be housed elsewhere. Claire stopped. Adrian's voice became quiet. Her name is Claire Bennett. The woman hesitated. Of course. But placing her in the royal residence creates an impression. What impression? Claire asked. The councilwoman looked surprised that she had spoken. That you hold a position here. Claire nodded slowly. I do. Temporary guest. She continued toward the stairs before Adrian could intervene. Later that evening, Claire stood alone beside the window of her room, staring at the mountains. A soft knock came at the door. Come in. Adrian entered carrying a familiar object. Her overnight bag. You left this downstairs. Thank you. He placed it beside the chair, but did not leave. Claire studied him. What? You should not have been treated that way. I have been underestimated before. That does not make it acceptable. Claire looked back toward the window. You defending me every 5 minutes will not fix it either. Adrian became still. Then what would? Let me speak for myself. He nodded after a moment. All right. Claire turned toward him. And stop looking at me like I might disappear. His expression shifted. Am I doing that? Constantly. Adrian looked away, caught. Claire softened slightly. I came because someone may know where I live. I did not come here to become part of your court. I know. Do you? Before Adrian could answer, a knock interrupted them. Marcus entered holding a sealed folder. We have a problem. Adrian took the documents and opened them. His face changed immediately. Claire stepped closer. What happened? Marcus looked directly at her. The council received an anonymous report claiming the person who placed the silver collar on the Alpha King had help from someone in Pine Hollow. Claire felt the room become colder. Marcus continued carefully. Someone who found him before anyone else did. Adrian slowly lifted his eyes from the page. Claire understood immediately. The whispers downstairs had been unpleasant. This was something else entirely. Someone was not merely questioning why she belonged at Blackwood. Someone was preparing to make everyone believe she had brought Adrian into her home because she had been waiting for him. Claire read the anonymous report twice before placing it back on the table. This is ridiculous. Marcus remained near the door. Ridiculous accusations can still damage reputations. Then investigate them. Claire looked directly at him. Check my phone records. Check my truck. Ask everyone in Pine Hollow where I was before I found Adrian. Marcus raised an eyebrow at her use of the king's first name, but Claire refused to look away. Adrian closed the folder. There will be an investigation, but Claire will not be treated as a suspect without evidence. The council may disagree, Marcus replied. Then the council can disagree with me. After Marcus left, silence settled between them. Claire crossed her arms. You should investigate me too. Adrian's expression did not change. No, that is exactly the wrong answer. I know you did not do this. You knew me for 3 days as a wolf. Exactly. Claire stared at him. Adrian stepped closer but stopped several feet away, giving her space. For 3 days, I could not speak, command anyone, or offer you anything. You could have taken the collar. You could have called the people searching for me. You could have used what you discovered. His gray eyes held hers. Instead, you cooked chicken because I refused canned food. Despite herself, Claire almost smiled. You were incredibly difficult. I was. You still are. Probably. The humor faded as quickly as it came. Claire looked toward the dark mountains beyond the window. There is something I need to ask you. Adrian waited. At my house, you called me your mate. His silence answered before his words did. Claire turned toward him. Was that real? Yes. The honesty unsettled her more than denial would have. What does that mean? My instincts recognized a bond between us. Your instincts? Yes. Claire nodded slowly. Then answer something else. If whatever is inside you had never decided I was your mate, would you still care about me? Adrian opened his mouth, then stopped. Claire's face changed. You do not know. I will not lie to you. That is not the same as an answer. No. Adrian looked down briefly. It is not. Claire walked toward the fireplace, needing distance. Everyone here looks at me and sees an omega attached to their king. You look at me and see a mate your instincts chose. Does anyone in this place actually see Claire? I do. She faced him. Then prove it without telling me what destiny says. Adrian had faced councils, territorial disputes, and decisions affecting thousands of people. None had ever left him without words. Claire continued quietly. I helped Buddy because he needed me. Not because he was powerful. Not because some bond told me to. I chose to help him. Adrian understood the distinction immediately. Claire wanted the same freedom from him. You are right, he said. She looked surprised. That was faster than expected. Do not become accustomed to it. A small smile touched her face, then disappeared. Adrian continued. I cannot change what my instincts recognized, but I can decide what I do with that knowledge. I will not ask you to accept a bond simply because I feel it. Claire searched his face. And if I never choose you? The question landed harder than Adrian expected. Still, he answered. Then I will respect that. Claire nodded, but something fragile remained between them. She moved toward the door. I need some air. Adrian did not stop her. For the first time since bringing her to Blackwood, he allowed Claire to walk away without following. Minutes later, alone in the room, Adrian looked at the empty doorway and finally understood the question he had been avoiding. Did he want Claire because his wolf had chosen her, or had his wolf simply recognized what the man had been too guarded to see? Across the estate, Claire stepped into the quiet greenhouse, unaware that someone had entered her guest room while she was gone. By the time she returned, a small silver fragment had been hidden inside her overnight bag, waiting for the council to find it. Claire returned from the greenhouse to find 2 council security officers waiting outside her guest room. Marcus stood with them, his expression carefully neutral. Adrian was already there. What happened? Claire asked. Marcus held up a written authorization. The council approved a search of all rooms connected to the investigation. Claire looked at Adrian. Did you approve this? No. His voice was controlled. But I will not prevent a lawful search if the same standard applies to everyone. Claire considered that, then opened her door herself. Fine. Search everything. The officers worked quietly while Claire stood beside the window. Adrian remained near the doorway, watching the process rather than her. Several minutes passed before one officer opened Claire's overnight bag. He stopped. Your Majesty. Claire turned. In his gloved hand was a small curved fragment of engraved silver. The room became completely silent. Adrian recognized the markings immediately. They matched the collar that had trapped him. Marcus exhaled slowly. That is unfortunate. Claire stared at the fragment. I have never seen that before. One council representative who had joined the search stepped forward. It was found among your belongings. Then someone put it there. Convenient. Claire looked at Adrian. For one terrible second, she remembered the question she had asked him only hours earlier. Did he see Claire, or merely the omega his instincts had chosen? Now she would learn something more important. Did he trust her when trusting her became difficult? Marcus spoke carefully. Your Majesty, until we understand her involvement, Miss Bennet should be isolated from sensitive areas. Adrian's eyes remained on the silver fragment. No. Marcus frowned. The evidence is clear. No, Marcus. The evidence is obvious. That is precisely why I do not believe it. Claire blinked. Adrian finally looked at her. When Claire found me, she had no idea who I was. She had access to the entire collar for 3 days. If she were involved, why keep a recognizable piece in the first bag investigators would search? No one answered. Adrian continued. And if she wanted me trapped, why did she repeatedly try to help remove it? Marcus's expression tightened. You are allowing personal feelings to influence your judgment. I am allowing facts to influence it. Adrian turned toward the officers. Document where the fragment was found. Then examine every entrance to this room, every staff assignment, and every person who knew Claire was in the greenhouse. Claire watched him, surprised by the certainty in his voice. He had not asked her to prove herself first. He had remembered who she had been when he possessed nothing. Marcus moved toward the door. The council will not accept this easily. Adrian's gaze followed him. Then perhaps the council should ask why someone is working so hard to make Claire look guilty. Marcus paused for barely a second before leaving. It was small, almost invisible, but Claire noticed. So did Adrian. Later, after the room emptied, Claire sat beside her overnight bag. You believed me immediately. Adrian stood across from her. I remembered the soup. She looked up. Chicken broth. Apparently the distinction matters. A quiet laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Adrian's expression softened. You helped me when I could offer you nothing. That was your evidence, Claire. Her smile faded into something warmer. And the mate bond had nothing to do with my decision. For the first time, she believed him. Then Claire looked toward the door Marcus had just walked through and remembered something from the night she found Adrian. The silver collar had carried a faint scent beneath the snow and metal, something familiar she had noticed again only minutes earlier when Marcus passed beside her. Cedar and expensive tobacco. Claire slowly stood. Adrian. His attention sharpened. What is it? She looked toward the hallway. I think I know who was close enough to that collar before I ever found you. Adrian did not dismiss Claire's suspicion, but he did not act on it blindly either. Within an hour, he had moved the investigation into a private conference room and limited knowledge of Claire's discovery to 3 trusted people. The original silver collar was brought from secure storage, still sealed inside its evidence case. Claire stood several feet away as the physician opened the outer container. Even from that distance, the memory returned immediately. Cold snow, wet cedar trees, Adrian struggling beneath the strange silver band. And underneath everything, that distinct trace of cedar and expensive tobacco. It is the same, Claire said quietly. Adrian watched her. You are certain? I noticed it that first night because it did not belong in the forest. I thought someone must have handled the collar before I found you. She hesitated. Marcus carries the same scent. One investigator exchanged a glance with another. Adrian remained composed. A scent is not enough. I know. Claire looked at him. But it is somewhere to start. Adrian nodded. Then we start there. Records were requested without alerting Marcus. Security logs showed that he had personally changed Adrian's travel schedule on the night of his disappearance. Financial documents revealed payments routed through a consulting company connected to a restricted silver supplier. None of it proved everything. But together the coincidences began forming a pattern. Then another detail emerged. Marcus had been one of only 4 people who knew Adrian's exact route through Pine Hollow that night. Claire sat across from Adrian as the evidence accumulated on the table between them. Why would he do this? Control, Adrian answered. If I disappeared long enough, the council would appoint temporary leadership. And Marcus expected to influence whoever replaced you. Most likely. Claire looked toward the silver fragment found in her bag. Then why frame me? Adrian's expression hardened. Because you found me before his plan was complete. A knock interrupted them. The lead investigator entered carrying a printed access report. We identified who entered Miss Bennett's room while she was in the greenhouse. Adrian stood. Who? A junior staff member assigned temporarily by Advisor Vale's office. Claire exhaled slowly. There it is. Not entirely, Adrian said. The staff member may have acted without Marcus's direct instruction. Claire studied him. You are still being careful. I have to be. Even after everything. Adrian met her eyes. Especially after everything. If Marcus is responsible, I want the truth to stand without anyone being able to call it revenge. Claire understood then why he had survived as king for so long. His restraint was not weakness. It was discipline. The investigation continued into the evening until a message arrived from the council demanding Claire be questioned publicly the following morning. Adrian read it once and set it down. No. Claire looked at him. You cannot protect me from every uncomfortable room. I know. Then let me go. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to face them? I want to answer them. She stepped closer to the table. Someone tried to turn me into the easiest person to blame because I am an outsider and an Omega. If I hide now, Marcus gets exactly the picture he wants. Adrian was silent for a moment. Then I will stand beside you. Claire shook her head. Not in front of me. Something shifted in his expression. Beside you, he repeated. This time she believed the distinction. The next morning, the council chamber was already full when Claire entered with Adrian at her side. Marcus stood near the far end of the long table, perfectly composed. The silver fragment rested inside a clear evidence container before him. "Miss Bennett," one council member began, "you understand the seriousness of what was found among your belongings." Claire pulled out a chair and sat down calmly. "Yes." Marcus watched her. Claire looked directly back at him. "I also understand that whoever planted it made one mistake." For the first time, Marcus's confidence flickered. Claire continued, "They assumed the Alpha King would doubt me before anyone investigated them." Adrian remained silent beside her. He did not need to speak. His presence made the answer clear. Marcus had built his plan around suspicion, hierarchy, and fear. What he had failed to understand was that 3 days in a small cottage had given Adrian something no forged evidence could erase. A reason to trust Claire before the world gave him permission to. The council chamber remained silent after Claire finished speaking. Marcus recovered first. "A compelling statement," he said, "but confidence is not evidence." Claire held his gaze. "Neither is a piece of silver someone hid in my bag." A councilwoman leaned forward. "Then perhaps you can explain why you recognized the material so quickly." "Because I spent 3 days looking at an entire collar made from it." Claire turned toward the council. "I was trying to understand what was hurting him." Adrian said nothing, exactly as she had asked. He stood beside her, not in front of her, allowing her words to carry their own weight. Marcus folded his hands. "And yet you expect us to believe you remember a scent from 3 nights ago?" "I remember details when something feels wrong." Claire glanced toward the evidence container. Then another memory surfaced. She saw herself kneeling in the snow beside Adrian, studying the silver collar beneath the beam of her flashlight. One section, near the clasp, had been different from the rest. Not engraved. Numbered. Claire straightened. The collar had a serial mark. Adrian turned toward her. "What?" "Near the clasp. 4 numbers and 2 letters. I thought it was a manufacturer's code." The lead investigator immediately opened the evidence photographs on a tablet. After several seconds, he found the image. "She is right." The room shifted. Claire leaned closer. "Can you trace it?" "Restricted silver is regulated. If the manufacturer kept records, yes." Marcus stood. "This meeting is becoming speculation built around the memory of one person." Adrian finally spoke. "Then you should have no objection to verifying it." Marcus stopped. The investigator left the chamber and returned less than 20 minutes later with a preliminary registry match. The collar had been manufactured by a private supplier in Montana and purchased through a consulting company already connected to payments authorized by Marcus's office. Murmurs moved around the table. Marcus's face remained controlled, but the certainty was gone. "My office manages hundreds of outside contracts." "Then there will be records," Claire said. Adrian looked toward the investigators. "Find them." By late afternoon, the final connection arrived. The junior staff member who had accessed Claire's room admitted receiving instructions to place a sealed object inside her overnight bag. The instructions had come through an internal account registered to Marcus's senior office. Marcus denied personally sending them, but the investigators had enough to suspend his authority and begin a formal inquiry. As he was escorted from the chamber without incident, Marcus stopped beside Claire. "You have no idea what you have changed." Claire met his eyes calmly. "Maybe that was your mistake. You never thought I could change anything." When the doors closed behind him, the room remained silent. Adrian looked at Claire with something deeper than gratitude. 3 days earlier, she had saved him because she refused to leave an exhausted animal in the snow. Now she had saved him again because she remembered 4 numbers and 2 letters everyone else had overlooked. Later, they stood alone on the terrace overlooking the mountains. "You were right," Adrian said. Claire glanced at him. "About what?" "I enjoy hearing those words. You saved me twice." She shook her head. "The investigators did the work. Because you gave them the missing piece." Claire leaned against the railing. "I suppose Buddy owes me quite a lot." Adrian smiled fully this time. Apparently. The warmth between them lasted only a moment before Claire became serious. "The investigation is almost over. That means I can go home." Adrian's smile disappeared. He could have mentioned the bond. He could have asked her to stay because his instincts demanded it. Instead, he remembered her question. Did he see Claire? "Yes," he said quietly. "You can." Something in her eyes shifted, as if she had expected him to argue. Adrian continued. "But before you leave, there is something I need to tell you. Not as your Alpha King. Not as the wolf you rescued. And not because any bond tells me to." Claire turned fully toward him. Adrian held her gaze. I need to tell you what these 3 days actually changed in me. Adrian remained silent for several seconds, as though the words mattered too much to rush. Snow drifted beyond the terrace, settling across the dark mountains while warm light spilled from the windows behind them. When you found me, he finally said, I believed losing my voice and my position was the worst thing that could happen to me. Claire listened without interrupting. Then you brought me into that little house and treated me like the most inconvenient creature you had ever met. You were extremely inconvenient. I know. A quiet smile crossed his face before fading. But you also treated me with more honesty than most people have in years. You argued with me when I was unreasonable. You cared when you thought I was in pain. You sat beside me when you believed I was only an animal that could never repay you. Claire lowered her eyes briefly. Adrian continued. My instincts recognized you before I understood any of that. But instinct is not why I trusted you in that council chamber. It is not why I remembered you standing in front of strangers at your door when you thought you were protecting a stray wolf. And it is not why the thought of your empty chair at breakfast tomorrow bothers me more than it should. Claire looked at him again. Then why does it? Adrian answered without hesitation. Because I love the woman who chose kindness when no one was watching. The words settled between them without demand. Claire's eyes softened, but Adrian did not move closer. I am not asking you to answer me, he said. And I am not claiming you. Claire raised one eyebrow. That would be wise. I learned from a very persistent Omega. Eventually, Adrian almost laughed. Then he became serious again. Tomorrow, I will address the council. I will make it clear that no bond, tradition, or title gives me ownership over another person. Whatever exists between us belongs equally to you, which means you have the right to reject it. Claire studied his face. Even if your wolf disagrees. My wolf survived being called Buddy for 3 days. He will survive disappointment. She laughed softly, and Adrian realized he would remember that sound long after she left. The following morning, he kept his promise. Before the assembled council, Adrian rejected every suggestion that Claire's connection to him gave Blackwood authority over her future. Marcus remained suspended while the formal investigation continued, and Claire's name was publicly cleared of suspicion. When Adrian finished, he did not look toward her for approval. He had finally understood that doing the right thing could not be another way of asking for a reward. By noon, Claire's bag was packed. Adrian walked with her to the front entrance, where a vehicle waited to return her to Pine Hollow. You are really letting me leave, she said. You asked me to see Claire instead of a mate chosen for me. His gray eyes held hers. Claire has a home, work she cares about, and a life that existed before I appeared on her couch. I will not ask her to abandon any of it before she knows what she wants. Claire swallowed against an emotion she was not ready to name. And what do you want? Adrian looked at her for a long moment. You. But only if one day you can say the same without destiny answering for you. Claire stepped into the vehicle. Adrian remained on the stone steps as it drove away, never ordering the driver to stop, never calling her back. 3 days later, Claire was home again, surrounded by familiar walls and an unexpectedly enormous amount of empty space. The couch looked wrong without black fur covering half of it. She tried reading. She tried working. She even bought canned food just to prove she could look at it without hearing an imaginary offended growl. Nothing helped. On the 4th evening, Claire stood beside the window as snow began falling over Pine Hollow. Near the edge of the forest, something dark moved between the trees. She stopped breathing. A massive black wolf emerged into the fading light, walked calmly toward her yard, and sat down in the snow. He did not approach the house. He did not demand entrance. He simply waited. Claire stared at him, and for the first time, there was no collar, no danger, no counsel, and no destiny forcing her hand. There was only a choice. Claire stood at the window for nearly a minute before the wolf lowered himself into the snow, apparently prepared to wait all night if necessary. That settled it. She pulled on her boots, grabbed her coat, and opened the front door. Cold air rushed inside. Adrian lifted his head, but remained exactly where he was. Claire crossed the yard until only several feet separated them. So this is your plan? She asked. His gray eyes watched her carefully. You disappear for days, come back as a wolf, and sit dramatically in my yard. One ear moved. Claire folded her arms. I see Blackwood has not improved your communication skills. Adrian still did not approach. That was when she understood. He was waiting for permission. The Alpha King who once declared she was his to protect had come all this way and stopped at the edge of her choice. Claire felt something inside her finally become clear. You could have come as a man. The wolf tilted his head. But you came like this because this is how I knew you first. Adrian lowered his head once. Claire smiled despite herself. You are still annoyingly clever. She turned toward the house and walked several steps before looking back. He had not moved. Are you coming, or do I need to rescue you again? Adrian stood immediately. That is what I thought. He followed her to the porch, but stopped at the doorway. Claire looked at him. If you are planning to steal my couch again, you are paying rent this time. The wolf walked inside with unmistakable dignity. Claire laughed and closed the door behind him. She gave him privacy while he shifted back into his human form, and several minutes later Adrian entered the living room wearing the clothes he had carried in a small pack. He looked strangely uncertain without a council chamber, guards, or a title between them. Claire had never liked him more. You waited outside, she said. You told me the choice had to be yours. And if I had never opened the door? Adrian's expression remained calm, though his eyes revealed the truth. I would have gone home. Claire believed him. That mattered more than every promise he could have made. She walked toward the couch and sat down. Adrian remained standing. Claire patted the cushion beside her. Do not make this complicated. I am trying very hard not to. He sat, carefully leaving space between them. Claire looked at that space and remembered 3 nights earlier, when she had sat beside a frightened wolf in the hallway without knowing that her life was changing. I missed Buddy, she said. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. I knew there would be consequences for returning. I missed Adrian too. His eyes opened. Claire took a slow breath. I needed to come home because I had to know whether I wanted you when there was no danger, no counsel, and no one telling me what a bond meant. Adrian waited. He did not finish the sentence for her. And he asked quietly. Claire smiled. And apparently I fell in love with an arrogant wolf who hates canned food. Relief softened his entire face. That is unfortunate. Extremely. Adrian reached toward her, then stopped before touching her hand. Claire noticed the question in that small hesitation. She answered by placing her hand in his. I am choosing this, she said. Not because you are the Alpha King. Not because your wolf recognized me. Because I know who you are when nobody is watching. Adrian gently closed his fingers around hers. Then I choose you for exactly the same reason. Outside, snow covered the road where Claire had found him 13 days earlier. Inside, the couch that had once started their first ridiculous argument now held them both. Adrian looked toward the fireplace, then casually stretched one arm across the empty cushion. Claire immediately narrowed her eyes. Do not even think about taking the whole couch. Adrian smiled. Some things should remain unchanged. Claire leaned against him, laughing softly. The king had come to her without a crown, and the Omega had opened the door without obligation. Neither belonged to the other. They simply belonged beside each other because, when every claim and expectation had finally been stripped away, they had chosen to stay.